I was 3 sentences into what I genuinely believed was my best material of the summer. Something about my landlord, a garburator, and a very specific Tuesday in February that I had mostly blocked out of conscious memory. When Leo's sister looked at me from across the picnic table and said, "You know you do that every time, right?" I stopped mid-sentence. Around us, the backyard had that easy Saturday energy, the last of August settling into the kind of warmth that made you forget a Canadian winter was still coming, as it always did, without any regard for how good the summer had been. Leo's friends were sprawled across lawn chairs with cans of Molson in their hands, half listening. The citronella candles were losing the fight against the mosquitoes. Sloane was sitting with her knees pulled up on the end of the bench, holding her drink with both hands, not laughing. Not unkindly, just not. "Do what every time?" I asked. "Turn it into a bit," she said. "Right when someone almost asks you something real." I laughed, which proved her point, and I knew it. I am a man of bits, it's a lifestyle. "Your landlord actually flooded your bathroom, and you lost a week of work," she said. "And you just made 12 people laugh about it, instead of telling anyone you were stressed." I looked around at the group. Nobody else had caught that. Or if they had, they weren't saying anything. That was the thing about being the funny one in a friend group. You could say almost anything as long as it landed right, and nobody would look too close. Sloane looked close. She had been back in Collingwood for about 6 weeks. She was 30 to Leo's 28, had gone to school in Toronto and then moved to Vancouver 4 years ago for a digital marketing job, and a guy whose name Leo had never been specific about and she had never corrected. Something had ended. The apartment in Kitsilano had been too expensive to keep alone, and so she was back, renting the upper floor of an old building on Hurontario Street, driving the same blue Subaru she'd bought used the year before she left. I hadn't had a real conversation with her before that night. She had always been around the edges of things the way older siblings were. Sometimes at Leo's for dinner when I was there. Once at a hockey game in the upper section while we were in the lower bowl. Never really a conversation. Familiar the way furniture is familiar. You stop seeing it. "You're not wrong," I said, which was about as honest as I usually got in a group setting. She tilted her head slightly. "There's a full sentence in there somewhere." I looked at the table. There was a citronella candle burning between us and someone's half-finished bag of Old Dutch chips. "My landlord's a nightmare," I said, "and I spent 3 days in February on a coworker's couch eating gas station food twice a day, and I was genuinely pretty miserable about the whole thing." She didn't make a big deal of it, she just said, "Yeah, that sounds really awful." It was. And somehow that was enough. The conversation moved on. Leo started an argument about the Leafs that everyone joined because it was Ontario and that was basically the law. But on the drive home I kept thinking about what she'd said. The garburator story was funny. I knew it was funny. I had tested it on 3 different people before that night. But I had also been 3 weeks behind on rent while an insurance claim crawled through the system, and I hadn't told anyone, because it was easier to turn it into something people could laugh at than to let anyone see me actually sweating. The next morning she texted me. Somewhere through Leo's group chat I must have given her my number. That was a good story, the landlord one. Me, I've been workshopping it. Sloane, the version where you admit you were stressed might actually land better. I stared at that for a long time. Then I wrote back, "I'll take it under consideration." For some reason I was still smiling when I put my phone in my pocket. Over the next couple of weeks, we kept running into each other the way you do in a town of 18,000, where everybody goes to the same Loblaws. She came into the building supply company, where I worked the logistics desk. She was helping Leo's mom order replacement decking boards for the back porch. I spotted her at Canadian Tire on a Wednesday, with a cart full of things that looked like they belonged to 3 different projects. She texted me a picture of a Tim Hortons order screen showing a large black coffee with the message, "I ordered this for you, canceled it, you're welcome." Me, why? Sloane, because you seem like a black coffee guy and black coffee guys need to be humbled occasionally. Me, I take a double-double actually. Even worse, chaos. None of it demanded anything. That was what made it easy to answer. Then Leo's dad organized a long weekend thing up at his cousin's property near Meaford. The kind of place with a dock on the bay and a fire pit and enough lawn chairs for a small town council. I showed up because Leo needed help hauling coolers from the truck. Sloane was already there, helping set up folding tables with her aunt. "Archer," she said when she saw me, like she had already assumed I would be useful, "you're good with heights?" "Moderately. Good enough." She handed me a string of patio lights and pointed at a maple tree. Leo threw it up there and now it's just stuck in the branches. I spent 20 minutes on a ladder untangling lights from a maple while she directed from below without mercy. More to the right. No, your other right. I told her there was only one right. She said not in her experience. By the time the lights were working, I had met her Aunt Lynn and her cousins, and her dad's friend who drove up from Barrie every year just for the brisket. I had been pulled into a cornhole tournament I did not sign up for and into a conversation about provincial transit that I usually kept opinions about to myself. Sloane kept doing what she had done at Leo's backyard, not hovering, just noticing the exact second I started drifting toward the edge of things and handing me some small reason not to. When her aunt asked who wanted to make a run to the foodland in town for more ice, Sloane pointed at me before I could step backward. When someone broke out a deck of cards, she said, "Archer's in," before I could figure out if I was. Near dusk she came and stood beside me at the end of the dock. The bay was flat and the light was going orange above the tree line on the other side of the water. "You doing okay?" she asked. I started to make a joke about the cornhole bracket. "That's not what I meant," she said. I looked out at the water. A loon called somewhere off to the left. That sound that only happens in Ontario in the summer, and always makes everything feel strangely specific, like the moment has weight. "I don't know," I said. "I'm fine. I just don't love big groups as much as people think I do." "I know. You don't actually know me that well." "No," she said. "But I know the bit. The bit means you don't want anyone to check." We stood there for a minute. The water moved. Somewhere behind us, Leo's dad started the grill, and someone turned up the Bluetooth speaker and people drifted toward the food. Normal long weekend sounds. I should have gone with them. Instead I said, "Why did you actually come back?" She was quiet long enough that I thought I'd pushed wrong. Then she said, "I kept waiting for Vancouver to feel like mine. It never did. I stayed 2 years past when I should have left, because I didn't want to come home and have everyone say, 'I thought you were building something out there.'" "Did it work?" I asked, "staying longer?" She smiled a little, tired around the edges, "Not particularly." We drove back the next day without talking about it again. But on the long stretch of highway coming through Wasaga, I kept thinking about what she'd said, about staying too long in something that didn't fit because you didn't want to be wrong out loud. I had a version of that too. A different move, the same fear underneath. The person I wanted to say that to wasn't Leo, it wasn't nobody. The following Thursday she texted me directly. Not through a group chat, not about something practical. "Sloane, there's an outdoor concert at the waterfront Friday. The town puts it on every August. I was going to go, come with me?" I read it in the break room, with half a butter tart in my hand, and a coworker talking about his truck in the background that I was not hearing. Come with me, just her, asking me. My chest did something sharp and inconvenient that I had been ignoring for 2 weeks. I knew what it meant. I liked her in a way that was getting harder to call incidental. I liked her sharp little corrections and the way she didn't let me get away with anything and was never cruel about it. I liked that she asked how I was, and then actually waited for an answer instead of moving on before she got one. That was the whole problem. Because while I was the funny one, while I was managing what people thought of me, and being the guy everyone was glad to have around, nobody could decide they didn't want me there. You can't lose a game you never really play. You can't get dropped from something you were never fully in. Sloane was asking me to be fully in. I typed 3 different replies, deleted all of them. My break ended. I told myself I would answer after work. After work I saw the message again and felt it again. That same closed-door feeling behind my ribs. So I did what I knew how to do. I did nothing. Friday came, working until 5, and then I drove around for a while, past the grocery store, past Canadian Tire, past the waterfront park where they had set up a small stage near the pavilion. String lights, a couple of food trucks, people on blankets in the grass while a band played something folky and unhurried. I slowed down and found her in the crowd. She was with her cousin, sitting on a blanket near the walking path, arms around her knees, not watching the stage, not really laughing when people around her did. I kept driving. That night, one message. "Sloane, I guess that's an answer." I didn't reply. I sat in my driveway with the engine off for a long time. I had kept everything at a safe distance. I had not let it become something that could go wrong. But it felt like watching something I wanted get smaller in the rearview mirror because I was too much of a coward to put the truck in park. Tell me in the comments, was I wrong to stay quiet or was she right to wait me out? I avoided her for 3 days, which in a town this size was almost an athletic achievement. I skipped Leo's on Saturday, took a longer route to work so I wouldn't pass her street. On Monday evening, Leo called me and I almost let it ring out. "You're doing the thing," he said. "What thing?" "The quiet thing, where everyone thinks you're just busy." I didn't answer. Did something happen with Sloane? I closed my eyes. Leo was mostly useless except for the occasional moment when he was completely accurate at the worst possible time. "I messed up," I said. "Then go fix it, that's it, that's the whole advice." Her apartment was above an old tea shop on a side street. The kind of building with stairs that creaked under your feet and a door that swelled in August heat. I sat in my truck outside for 30 seconds. Then I made myself go up before I could turn 30 seconds into 20 minutes and 20 minutes into leaving. She opened the door in a gray cardigan, hair loose, face calm in a way that made something in my stomach drop. Not cold, just waiting. "Hey," I said. "Hey." Nothing funny came. I put my hands in my jacket pockets and took them out again. "I'm sorry," I said. She leaned against the doorframe. "For not answering or for driving past?" I exhaled. "You saw me. You were doing 20 kilometers an hour, Archer." "Yeah." I looked down at the mat. It said home on it with a small maple leaf, one corner curling up. "Both," I said. "I'm sorry for both." She waited. She didn't fill the silence or make it easier. She just stood there and let me find what I was actually trying to say. "I wanted to go," I said. "When you texted me, I wanted to say yes right away. That's the truth." "But you didn't." "No." Her eyes were steady, but I could see the hurt in them now. Not huge, not performed. Just real, the way real things are when nobody is putting them on. "I'm not upset because you couldn't make it," she said. "I'm upset because you made me feel like asking was the wrong call." That sat where it was supposed to. I had been so busy keeping myself at a manageable distance that I hadn't thought about what it looked like from her side. Her sending the message, her waiting, her at that concert not really watching the stage. "I know," I said, "and I hate that I did it." "Then why did you?" The question sat in the doorway between us. I could have shrugged. I could have made something lighter out of it. I could have made her smile and turned the whole thing into a story I would tell at someone's kitchen table later and never really think about again. "Because I don't know how to want something that much without making it into a bit," I said. "The bit keeps people from getting close enough to leave. If I'm the funny one, if I'm always the one making the room easier, nobody has to decide they don't want me around. I'm just available. Easy. Low stakes." She watched me without moving. "When you asked me to come with you, just me, I couldn't call it casual anymore. It meant something, so I did what I always do." "You turned it into nothing." "Yeah." The hallway light behind her was warm. I could see the bookshelf near her window, leaning slightly because the wall wasn't quite plumb. A mug on the counter, her coat on the hook, her life, right there. "I've been the guy everyone's glad to have around for a long time," I said. "But nobody actually knows what I'm worried about, or what I want, or when things are hard. Because I never let it get that far. It's a lot easier to be entertaining than to be known." Sloane's expression shifted, not forgiving yet, not closed either. "You hurt me," she said. "I know. That doesn't become a sad story about your issues and suddenly become okay. I'm not trying to make it one." "Good." She was quiet for a moment, then she stepped back from the door. "You can come in, not because everything's fine, because you came back and said something real." I breathed out. "I'll try not to comment on the bookshelf. It's leaning because the wall is crooked, and if you suggest otherwise, I will close this door right now." That got a real laugh out of me. She didn't quite smile yet, but almost. We sat on her couch with tea. She had an entire shelf of it, every kind, very Vancouver of her, she admitted, and talked until almost 11, not smoothly. I had to apologize, again, more plainly. She told me she had waited 2 days for me to answer before she went to that concert alone, and I had to sit with that without explaining it away. She told me that patience wasn't the same as willingness to stand in the same doorway every single time. I heard it. I didn't leave. The following Saturday, Leo had people over, pizza, cards. Someone brought a 2-4 of Keith's. Shoes piling up by the door. Sloane was there. She looked over when I walked in, not quite smiling yet but not closed off. I sat beside her on the floor by the coffee table. Leo caught it and raised his eyebrows at me from across the room. I ignored him. For a while everything was easy, loud and ordinary the way those nights always started. Then later, the way they always went, the room softened. People leaned back, the music dropped a little. Conversations turned honest around the edges. I felt the old reflex wake up, the pull toward a joke, the quiet urge to check my phone, my keys in my jacket pocket reminding me they were there. I stood up, picked up the empty pizza boxes from the coffee table. Taking these out, I said. Then I'm coming back. Outside, the porch air was cool the way Ontario late August gets at the very end, that first edge of something colder moving in from the north. My truck was across the street under a streetlight. Easy, familiar, not going anywhere. I looked at it for a second. Then I put the boxes in the recycling bin, closed the lid, and went back inside. Sloane was still on the floor. She had left the space beside her open without making a production of it. I sat back down, our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away or made it into something. A few minutes later, under the noise of Leo arguing badly about card rules, she leaned slightly toward me and said quietly, "You came back." I looked at her. I didn't reach for something lighter to put over it. "Yeah," I said I would. She looked at me for a moment, then looked back at the cards, but she was smiling. I stayed until the night ended properly. Until people were pulling on their shoes and Leo's mom was texting him about the noise. I left at the same time as everyone else, like someone who had simply been there all along, like someone who belonged to the room the same way everyone else did. In my truck, I sat for a moment before turning the key. The windows were just starting to fog at the corners. The streetlight was doing something orange and ordinary through the maples. A completely regular Saturday night in a small Ontario town. I had stayed. The ceiling hadn't lowered. Nobody had turned on me. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel like getting away with something. It felt like choosing and meaning it.